Hello everyone, and welcome back to another light novel review. I am the Rat, and this is The Rat's Nest. Today we are diving into a volume. On a series I am very far behind. Classroom of the Elite, Volume 7. A big volume for the series, I believe. Some very important stuff happened, but before we get into it, I want to give a little bit of my background for this series, because I've never covered Classroom of the Elite on the channel before, any medium. So, I say I'm a pretty big fan of Classroom of the Elite. I haven't read it in a while. But I got into Classroom of the Elite whenever the anime first aired. Season 1 of the anime, whenever that first aired, I loved it. I was a huge fan of it. And then whenever I started getting into light novels, Classroom of the Elite, I think, started publishing March 2019. And that was a little bit after I got into collecting light novels. And so I was able to pick up volume 1 of that. And so then I started reading the light novels. Now, obviously, I'm a bit far behind. I got a bit far behind, but I do still love this series. But it has been a second since I've read it. I read Volume 6, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly. I read Volume 6 almost 2 years ago now. it's been a second. I was pretty good about keeping up with it for a while, and then I lost it. But Volume 6, I remember enjoying 2 years ago, but I would be remiss if I said I remembered a lot of details. So that was something when reading this volume. I had to remember a lot of stuff. But I still thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, obviously I remember the big plot points. It's just some of the details. The thing with Classroom of the Elite is it's such a detail-oriented series, where there's so much detail put into the minutia of everything that it can be really difficult to remember all the moving parts. Especially with a 2-year break between it, but reading it, I kind of caught up, and I feel like I remembered most everything that I needed to know to really appreciate this volume. Obviously, this is a very important volume. I also remember with this volume there being controversy whenever it first came out, because it was kind of this controversy. I remember it because it was also kind of tied into Seven Seas as a whole, with my favorite series of all time, Mushoku Tensei, and some of the translation stuff, where they cut stuff straight up out of the volume. They straight up cut stuff out of this volume. And I always remembered that. I was like, it's really interesting to look and be like, I knew that this was all really important. And as far as I understand, they corrected all of it. Because I was looking through stuff, I didn't want to get spoiled, so I was kind of careful in what I looked through. But I was looking through stuff where people were noting the differences between the original translation of Volume 7 and the fan translations of the online volume, and noticing everything that was cut out. If I remember correctly, everything that I read, right, from what was cut out, I was fairly certain that I remembered that being in the volume. I could be wrong. There could still stuff be cut out. But I think that they went back and fixed it. Obviously, I do have the revised edition. That might be a question some people have. I do have the revised edition. I'd like to one day, just for history, get a pre-revised edition. I don't know if I'll ever be able to find one. But I would like for history to be able to do that. Because I like the different editions. Little side tangent. I have all the original Mushoku Tenseis. I even have a first edition Volume 1 with the full gloss cover. That's a little thing. I'll probably do a light novel collection video at some point. But back to Classroom of the Elite. I really enjoyed this volume. So let's just get straight into it. This volume is basically the culmination of Ryuen's plan, right? To expose the secret leader of Class D, obviously my boy Ayano Koji. It's like the culmination of that, and then their big meeting on the rooftop, and sprinkled in are some little slice of life scenes of Ayano Koji and his little crew with Airi, who is so far behind on the I want to date Ayano Koji scale. I'm further ahead than she is. It's fun to see Ayano Koji kind of get to chill with these guys and get to have friends. I think that one of the interesting things with Classroom of the Elite is how Ayano Koji is kind of an unreliable narrator, where I think that his thoughts and what he actually does are two pretty different things, to where from his thoughts he can really enjoy stuff. But I also think, and this is something else I'll preface with this review, I'm not going to claim to remember everything about Classroom of the Elite, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert on everything, because like I said, there's been a 2-year gap. But from what I got, I don't think that Ayano Koji experiences any emotions, right? But in his mind, he likes to think, oh, like I do, and experience stuff that he like. Okay, I think this is this. I think this is that. So I think that, and I think that's kind of clear from his portrayal in the anime, where we have, it's still he's the main character, but less from the difference in adaptation there. But getting to see all of that, I think it's really. I enjoyed getting to see him with all his friends. We get introduced to the cover girl who likes books. She's cool. He gets asked out by the girl from like last volume, I believe. So that'll be interesting. I think that's going to be covered in volume 7.5, just little short stories, right? Which I'm really looking forward to 7.5. And I'm definitely going to be reading more Classroom of the Elite going forward, because one of my favorite. It's an old favorite of mine that I just kind of fell out of that I'm getting back into. But the big thing, obviously, being Ryuen's plan, and then Ayano Koji meeting up with his father, and us finally getting to meet his father. I don't think we've ever met him before. And so I'll talk about that. So that was really cool. And obviously this plays into a lot of Ayano Koji's mind games, right? Where his father wants him to drop out because he was in the White Room, which is, the big torture, whatever, to help him learn, and where he like watches people die and whatever, cool, right? That's where Ayano Koji got all his good stuff, and he was raised in that kind of environment. And his father wants him to come back because apparently he was shut down for a year, so he went to live with a butler who gave him the idea to join the school. Then Ayano Koji's father was like, yeah, well, the butler, his son, I made his son's life worthless, and then he killed himself in despair, and then his son is still stupid and worthless, and I'm not doing anything to help him. I'm only hurting him. And he's like, you did that. And Koji's like, no, you did that. I didn't do anything. If anything, why would I drop out now? Because my butler wanted me to do this, right? So this is he sacrificed everything for me to do this. So why would I drop out now for him? It was very cool to see, I think, how ruthless Ayano Koji's father really is. Obviously we've seen a lot of it. Not like seen a lot of it, but a lot of implications with the White Room and what the White Room is and what all's done. And there's still kind of a lot of mystery around the White Room and who Ayano Koji's father is. But just to see how ruthless he is, that he really doesn't care about anything other than achieving results. And to also get Ayano Koji's little motivation here, which I think that this probably is his motivation, where he's like, I want to see if normal people can be brought up to my level, right? He's like, I want to prove your hypothesis wrong, basically. He's, I want to prove that I can be outdone. I think that's his true motivation. His motivation is kind of skewed in a couple areas as to what he really thinks. I think I don't even know if he truly knows what he really thinks. And I think that this is a pretty accurate representation of what his goal is, where he's like, I'm in my rebellious phase, right? You can't train that out of people. And, where Ayano Koji, I think he wants to prove his father wrong. I think he wants to be beaten at his own game. If nothing else, I think maybe maybe his motivation is he just wants to learn everything there is to learn. And maybe here that helps with that. Obviously, like he said, there's things that you can learn in the real world that you just can't learn about in the White Room, right? So, I need to get out there and experience it. I know he also doesn't like his father. But his father wants him to drop out. Obviously, he can't force him to do that. Sakayanagi, the father of the white-haired chick from Class A, who's like the board chairman, comes in and tells him, like, no, you can't do that, and talks to Ayano Koji. So there we learn, this is interesting too, that all the students are accepted in, not based on the exam and interview results, like they're pre-approved. Like, you only get in if they pre-approve you. The exams and nothing, they mean nothing, right? They mean absolutely nothing. You only get in if you're approved, but that's a big hush-hush secret, right? And Ayano Koji is like the only student that they didn't pre-approve to come in, that Sakayanagi saw and was like, okay, yeah, no, we're letting this kid in, right? We're letting him in, that kind of thing, which I really I think that's a very interesting thing about this school. Obviously, there's a lots of rules and details of the school that I think we still don't know. But this is where another thing comes in, where after the scene, we get Ayano Koji talking with the teacher, whose name that I can't fully remember how to pronounce, so I'm not going to butcher it. Sai is her first name. And so I probably mispronounced that, right? But we get to see him talking to her, and her threat of, your father wants me to expel you if you don't get us to Class A. He's like, I'm calling bull on that. I don't think you talked to him whatsoever. I don't think you've ever had any contact with him before. I think that you just really want to get to Class A, and you're using me to do that. And she's like, yeah, you caught me. And he's like, yeah, well, you're gay, so sucks to suck. And so he's like, I'm not going to try to get to Class A anymore, right? He's like, I'm cleaning my hands of the situation. I'm not going to try anymore. He's like, I don't care. Does he actually not care? I don't know. Because some of his actions kind of seem contrary to that. But like, I want to believe him here that he doesn't care. But also, I don't know. I can't look. I feel like there's a lot of layers here, and I've just kind of been disconnected for too long to kind of look through them. Or maybe it's intentionally vague like that, to where the reader isn't supposed to fully know what exactly Ayano Koji is thinking, which is very cool in its own right. But then the rest of the volume is focused on Ryuen and Ryuen's plan. We get to see him go around, he talks to Koenji and, talking to them. Another interesting thing with this volume was getting back into it and remembering everyone and everyone's names. There's a lot of characters in Classroom of the Elite, and contrary to most series with a lot of characters, I think it handles them all pretty well. A lot of characters get a decent amount of screen time each, to where, some of them are intentionally left mysterious, but the side characters, they feel like genuine characters. Just with how Ayano Koji, interacts with them. It really fleshes out the world and the school, and I really, really enjoy that and enjoy getting to see that. We get to see Ryuen go through that, and ultimately his plan falls on Kurosawa, to where he's like, look, we know that she is working for X. We know that she's working for this mysterious leader of Class D, right? She's here, she's working for him. We can get to him through her, right? Hatches this whole plan. Obviously, they go up on the roof. They, hold her. They bully her. Reawakens her memories of being bullied in the past. And it's like, look, like, you just give us X's name, we'll let you go. If you don't, we'll expose your secret to everyone. But if you do, then you can keep living your peaceful life, right? Just tell us X's name. And obviously, Kurosawa being thrown into like darkness here. This was really sad. It was, it was really, really sad, guys. It's sad to see her like this, and to see her in this state of just despair of like, my life is ruined, right? If my secret gets out, it's never going to be the same. It's going to go back to how it was. But ultimately, she decides that she's not going to betray Ayano Koji, because she's like, look, he said he'd save me, but he's not here, right? So I was abandoned again, but it was fun, right? It was fun to work for him, fun to do that stuff. I'm not going to betray him. So she doesn't. She stands up there. She takes it. She's like, my life may be over, but at least he can go on, right? At least he can go on, keep it on, and it was fun while it lasted, right? And so I think that shows a lot of strength of character from her, to be able to go through all of this, but to also, be like, I had fun. I had my fun. I'm not going to betray him, even though he betrayed me. Of course, he didn't betray her. Well, he kind of did. She also learns, like, he's the one that set everything up to get you under his finger, right? And so, she feels completely... He did do that, right? But then, of course, Ayano Koji comes up because, dude, everything he does is calculated. Like, that's part of the thing that makes kind of reviewing this and remembering everything really complicated, because it's like I had, having to remember every single thing that Ayano Koji does, because it's just like, it probably means something. It probably means so. Everything he does probably means something. As he goes out with his crew to the mall to get an alibi, and then he goes back, and he talks to the teacher, and then he calls in Orikta's older brother, who called him about the student council. That's definitely going to be a big focus, maybe in year 2. But that's definitely going to be a big focus of him battling it out with the student council and all that. He calls him in as like for a favor. We don't know what Ayano Koji's side of the favor is, but he's like, look, this guy's going to be a witness, right? And then there's also a discussion about the rules of the school and like what they mean exactly. Like, in year 2 and year 3, there's probably different rules, like they can't share test scores, right? And everything has a set price, and everything has a price, but you also have to meet certain criteria to be able to buy something or to be able to know the price. It's really an intricate rule set they have here at the school, where they have thousands of rules for every single possible scenario. But Ayano Koji comes up, and Ryuen spray painted the camera, and he talks to him. He's like, I'm X. They don't believe him, and he's like, okay. And then Ryuen goes to try to beat him up, but obviously Ayano Koji, being the based guy that he is like, no, you're stupid, you're gay, give me $200. And he beats all of his people up, and he beats Ryuen up. And then we get the second ever double page illustration that I've ever gotten in a light novel of Ayano Koji beating up Ryuen. It is the second ever double-page illustration I've gotten in a light novel. The first being Mushoku Tensei Volume 2, The Displacement Incident. That was insane to see. I was like, well, I wasn't expecting that at all. But obviously very, very cool to see, right? The double-page spreads are insane. Obviously, this being a big moment of where, Ruin and Ayano Koji talking, and Ayano Koji's like, yeah, you thought that I was playing into your hand, right? You've been expecting so much of me, but you were actually playing into my hand the entire time. I set everything up. I laid the trail of breadcrumbs that you took to overcomplicate your plan, to get your overly complicated plan. Yeah, I actually planned for you to make that overly complicated plan. I did everything. You've been playing into the palm of my hand this entire time. And that's kind of where the unreliableness of Ayano Koji as a narrator comes in, because it's like, whoa, right? This entire time Ayano Koji's been planning all this, and there really hasn't been any details from Ayano Koji. Obviously everything being from his perspective, there hasn't even been much detail from that of him planting all this. I don't think that he's just pulling this out his ass, right? I think that this is very valid and very accurate as to, I think that he genuinely did plan all of this. I mean, the dude is an ultra mega genius who, can't be beaten at anything whatsoever. His whole thing is, look, Ruin, right? And, he beats him up. He's like, look, I could get you at any point in time, right? I could report this at any point in time that you attacked me, right? That you attacked everyone here, right? That I could get you expelled at any time. That's why you can't tell anyone that I'm X. You can't reveal my identity, and you can't reveal Kuruzawa's past. He's like, if my identity gets out, then I'm reporting you, right? And he's like, and Ruin's like, well, I could reveal your identity. And he's like, yeah, but all I would have to do then is sacrifice Kuruzawa's past. He's like, you put too much weight in the value of my identity in her past. He said that ultimately, if that happens, right, that sucks. But you guys get expelled. I'm still here, right? You guys get expelled. You put way too much weight into that. And obviously he beats Ryuen up physically, so Ryuen can't even use violence. And so Ryuen, realizing this, that he's fully trapped, that he can't do anything, he fully admits defeat. This is Ryuen's ultimate defeat, where he can't do anything. He's always been on the upper hand. He's always had an upper hand. And this is it. It's not just, he can't bully him, and there's no way Ryuen can beat him up physically. There's no way Ryuen can get into his mind, because Ayano Koji holds the upper hand in every single thing here. There's no way. Ryuen is at a complete disadvantage. It's his complete loss. I really like that, because Ryuen isn't a character that could lose except for a complete loss. This is everything that's been building up with everything he's been planning, right? And it's once again, it is his complete and utter loss. And he's broken. He's like, well, I'm going to go drop out. I'm going to report this, right, to save, everyone else from Class C. Because at the end of the day, Ryuen was planning on everyone from Class C moving up. He genuinely cared about being their leader. Is he an awful person? Oh, absolutely. But he did care about his class, right? And that's shown in his plan for 800 million points to buy spots in Class A for all of Class C. And his willingness to sacrifice himself for Ibuki and the other Class C guys there, so they're not gone. And he's like, look, you guys, no one's gonna want to follow me. I'm lost. Like my hands are tied in regards to Class D. Like, I literally can't do anything. Like my hands are tied. No one wants a leader like that. I'm leaving. They convince him to stay, because they're like, if you drop out, we're dropping out too, right? And ultimately, the only thing that was reported, I think, was the spray painting of the light, or there. Then Ayano Koji even said that I think that, like, he kind of assisted with that or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a non-offense, right? It was like, oh, that doesn't matter. Ryuen was like, I'm still going to drop out. He ultimately got convinced to stay in. So it's going to be interesting to see his role going forward, especially given the end, where we see that Kuruzawa is talking to Ayano Koji, and he's like, I'm not asking you to forgive me. And he's like, I just want you to know that if you're ever in that position again, I will help you out. I will come and save you. Like I promised, I think he makes good on his promises too. I don't think he's the type to promise something and not deliver, but at the same time, it benefits him, because as his thought says, look, I could have rescued her right away, and that would have increased her dependency on me by a lot more, right? He said, or I could have not done it, could have not rescued her, and she falls into complete despair. He goes, either way, I think I would be fine. He goes, what I did was I waited until like the last second to come in and save her, so she will always in future situations keep hope that I will come and save her. He's like, I've established that now, that I will always come and save her, even at the last second. She will hold on hope until the last second now. He's like, she's fully wrapped around my fingers. He's like, she's too useful of a tool to lose. Bro doesn't care about her at all. It's based. It's so cool. Someone else got tool zoned in this series. That's crazy. He's like, she's too useful of a tool to lose. At the same time, completely breaking Ryuen and having that kind of hold over him. He's like, Ryuen will be an interesting tool in the future too. So Ryuen's role in the future is going to be very interesting to see. Maybe he works together with Ayanokoji, or maybe Ayanokoji controls him to work against, Class B and Class A, and kind of work to sabotage them. And so, the question is, does this essentially put Ayanokoji as the leader of both Class D and Class C? Because he's obviously the secret mastermind of Class D, right? And now he essentially controls the leader of Class C. Is Dude just going to control everything? Is Dude going to become a secret mastermind of the entire school? Because that would be really, really cool. And again, this is the question of Ayanokoji's motives. Like, what does he want? Because, in thinking of what he told his dad, right, I think that part of it is definitely he wants to prove his dad wrong. He wants to prove that people can beat him. Maybe he wants people to beat him at his own game. But also he told the teacher, I'm not aiming for Class A. I'm going to step back. He cut off contact with Kurosawa. But also that was probably just all part of his plan to ultimately finish Ryuen and get into this position of complete dominance over him, to where he basically controls Class C at this point too. That's kind of insane. If this was all his plan, maybe my thought here is, I think that Ayanokoji is going to try to completely dominate this school, right? It's going to kind of seem as unintentional, right? I think he's gonna lie to other people. I think he's going to try to completely dominate it, and he wants someone to beat him. I think he was playing this. Maybe he wanted Ryuen to beat him, but also I don't know if Ryuen ever had the capabilities. With how he handled Ryuen, who's going to beat him? Because Ryuen is smart. Ryuen is smart and he plans. Now, sure, Ichinose from Class B and Saki Yanagi from Class A, they're going to be different, right? They're going to be different beasts for him to fight than Ryuen was. But at the same time, who can beat him? Is he raising, and that's another thing, is he raising Horikita up and Class D up to where one day they can beat him? I don't know. That's the really interesting thing of who can beat Ayanokoji at his own game, if that is his goal. Or maybe his goal is just complete and utter domination, right? I don't know. He's kind of unreliable in that sense. And then maybe on the other hand, maybe he does care about Kei, and he's just using the whole tool thing as an excuse to help her out, right? And maybe he doesn't even realize that. But personally, I think that he's trying to dominate the school, trying to climb to the top, and he wants someone to stop him. So it's the interesting question of who's going to stop him and how are they going to stop him, whenever he fully had Ryuen playing into the palm of his hand this entire time. That's just insane to me, right? How he was able to manage everything and to work it to where it's the most optimal position for him to be in. Maybe not most optimal, but maybe I'm forgetting stuff. Maybe I'm looking too into stuff. I don't know. But I thoroughly enjoyed this volume, and I'll be reading more sooner than 2 years from now. I'll be reading more sooner from 2 years now. I really do want to get caught up to this series. This is one of two series that I'm not caught up with that I want to get caught up with, so I'm really going to be focusing on those two series in terms of the stuff that I buy, Classroom of the Elite and Grimgar Fantasy and Ash, where I really, really want to get caught up with those series, and there's a lot of books that I have to read in order to do that. But I think these two series are really going to be my focus of I'm catching up. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this volume, and I cannot wait for volume 7.5. So, if you're this far in the video, obviously there's something you like, so make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me your favorite part of this volume. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.